Hello, Sam, again. Sorry we missed last week, and people have been asking me where I was last week. However, I thought I'd start off rather light this morning, as I may have some heavy stuff later on. But I received this from Mary Madison some time ago, and it was about a ghost in Peacock Vane, which it was a lovely hotel in Bonchurch. It's now a private house. I believe it started off as a private house, and it's back where it started. In the meantime, it's been a very super hotel, and at the time, Mary worked there. Well, I must tell you, Mary worked there as a waitress, but she wasn't just an ordinary waitress. It belonged to two fellows who were very extrovert, and they had a lovely housekeeper and these two ladies who waited. And one was Mary Madison, and she went under the name Lady Marigold. So everyone knew her as Lady Marigold. And there was another one who now lives just down the lane from me, and her name, she was known as Lady Aubricia. So Lady Aubricia and Lady Marigold were the waitresses, which delighted the clients who came to stay. They just loved the pair of them. And of course, Mary was full of Irish stories, not only Irish stories. People would ask her about a couple of photographs on the wall, or a chair, an unusual chair, and she would have this wonderful story about these people and the chair. But the chair I must tell you about, because these people asked her about this particular chair, and anyway, she told the story about who this chair belonged to and all the rest of it, and they said, but what's it made of? And she said, oh, it's made of padook. And she said, this word came out of my mouth and I had no idea what it was. She said, and I found out that this chair was made of padook. So that is how her stories came about. They were fed into her mind, really, just like Robin receives his information. Mary receives her stories. And this was a ghost who was at Peacock Vane. So I thought I would begin. I found this yesterday, and I thought I would begin by reading you a little light entertainment. So here we go. Her name was Emma. It is most convenient that you have called here, as you can hear me. I see that by your light you may be able to help me on my way. I am trapped here. By the way, this is Margot receiving this, not Mary. Mary had called Margot in because there was a ghost there. And so this is the ghost that Margot rescued. I see that by your light you may be able to help me on my way. I am trapped here. I have tried to attract attention by knocking over ornaments and making the pictures fall. I'm sorry if I've caused any fear. I was living on the mainland. I was attacked by a man. I was but 17 years of age. My mamma, who was a widow, sent me to recover to my cousin, who owned this house. I was in a sorry state. At first I was made most welcome and fussed over. I shunned all men. They terrified me, even my cousin's husband. I became quite sullen. After a few months, my mamma died, and after the funeral I returned here to live with my relatives. Oh dear, how very different. The lovely bedroom was mine no longer. I had one in the servants' quarters. I ate with the family when they were alone, but when they had guests to dinner, I was expected to help in the dining room, just as if I were a parlour maid. I became very vicious. I smashed some very valuable ornaments on purpose. I said the gardener had been familiar. This was untrue. Yet this lie got the poor man dismissed. I died young. My fault. Getting wet and refusing to change into dry clothing. I then found I was back here. I've waited patiently. A century and a half is a long time. There have been changes here, ones I do not like. I tried to attract someone's attention by doing what I did. Now I can get on the pathway to heaven, I hope. My name is Emma. I thank you. Tell the lady not to be afraid. It will not be me who interrupts her slumbers. Farewell." And with that, Emma left. And Liz was the housekeeper, and she had been, this was the reason that she called Mary Margot in, really. She had been pushed down the stairs. Whether it was Emma or not, I don't know. My daughter also worked at Peacock Vane at one time, my youngest daughter, and she said there were ghosts there. Well, of course, it's an old house, and I think most old houses have ghosts anyway. They creak and they groan, and it might be a ghost, and it might just be the stairs or the floorboards. However, always be prepared. If you're living in an old house or an old cottage like I do here, many people have died here. Many people have had experiences in places, and they can leave that like a memory of it. So I thought I would tell you that to start off with. Now, I had a question about the light when we pass, because I'd read my father last time. If you remember, I'd read about my father, and my sister had heard from someone called Mahatma Lumpali, and he had said he would be there when she passed, and the luminescent light that she followed would be the one that was right for her. And so I had a query, because someone who has become a pen friend, as you might say, from America, her name is Lisa. She has recently lost a friend, and they used to talk on spiritual matters and the sort of things that we discuss here. And she wanted to know about the light when we pass. So I passed this information on to Robin, and I got an answer for her. So Lisa, this is for you. This was on March the 5th, so it's very recent. In answer to a question, this question, as I say, is from Lisa. An inquiry has been gifted with regard to the light that we receive when passing. My dear friends, an analogue of history of thought has to be portrayed with all thinking patterns. You must understand that as you concern yourself about matters outside of your realm, we concern ourselves about your realms and your concerns about what you think or feel will occur as and when. You must remember that the world in itself, as you see it, is not as it actually is. Within the circumspect volume of your planet, there are many different time spans, different plans, different dimensions, different concerns, different realities, all happening at the same time. Yet, if you were to walk in each, you are separated by time. And that time in itself is linear, restricted to your realm and your realm only. Turn a dial, you are in another realm, yet you are in the same planet, on the same position, yet you are somewhere else, where all those or what or the buildings you are used to seeing are no longer there, because they were either not built at that point, or are yet to be built, or have fallen down, depending whether you stand in the present, the past, or the future. You must also look at the quantum thought patterns that are involved with regards to answering what light you meet. If you were looking at the planet from the outside, at what time span do you view it at? This is the issue. If you are not of this dimension, of the dimension we are talking from and listening from, now, at this point in linear time, if you are not from that dimension, then you will see what? Which part of history will you see? Which part of the world will you see? You have to understand that the world in itself, as you see it, has to be a facade. It is an image that is created depending on what facade you are part of at that point in time. Reality in itself is based on mindsets. It is very difficult to equate quantum thinking to singular thinking. Singular thinking is the mapping that the human being has. It is the mapping that allows him to stay on terra firma, allowing him to carry out the restriction or de-restriction of this life, depending on which avenue you choose. So, my children, my people, my person, what light do you receive when you pass from here? There are many, many different light options to be had, depending on the consciousness that you carry. So the long and short answer of this, the light you see depends upon the consciousness you carry. The consciousness of humanity is indeed raising. It is moving and spiralling towards a welcoming of new conscious beliefs and thinking. New in themselves doesn't necessarily mean they haven't happened before, but new to you. Your genetics are retuning themselves. And when I say yours, I am talking about those that will listen to this message. Those that are listening to this message are evolving towards an originality of spiraling DNA, moving back to the original 12 strands. That will not happen in one lifetime. It cannot happen in one lifetime because the mapping of the body that you have will not allow it. But it will happen. Not in your time, but in linear time. There are so many things that could be mentioned at this point that might confuse matters. But one has to move out of what it is you expect to see. Because what it is you expect to see may be very different to your best friend next door, your mother, your brother, your sister, your lover. They will all visit a different version of light, depending on the consciousness that they carry. This is very difficult because it creates separation. Everybody has choices. If you can imagine that you left school, your junior school, and you moved up to the next section of schooling, which is senior school, and you have a group of 30 friends that all come from one class in the junior school, and you go to the senior school, yet you are all separated by forms, classes, divisions, intellect, ability at sport or the arts, and you go off in different directions. And that once inseparable composure that you all had is separated by what it is that you have, what it is that you carry. It doesn't mean to say that some person is clever or better than you. Many tribes of Aboriginals allowed their children to develop and educate themselves in their time, not the time allocated to them by educational systems. It is exactly the same with a soul. A soul carrier will educate themselves in time. You must understand that in that time there are many traps and pitfalls that will indeed entice you towards somewhere that might disallow your soul to grow. But in truth, all avenues of expectation, exits, disasters, and so on are all growth processes, every single one of them. The point is that now we have ended one component of linear time, and we are entering into another component of linear time. And the soul growth is being projected a little bit like a rocket on firework day, firing up into the sky. My children, it is not intellect that will take you to the next realm. It is allowing your imagination to grow, to flourish like a field of wild daisies, move with the factions of wind, moved with the factions of composure, and allow yourself to blow and flourish and be nourished by the land. You will grow, but you will not grow in the time that you expect. So the answer in truth, my children, my people, my person, is this: love is the key to the door. Your consciousness has an opportunity to grow, as you do. Do not create linear patterns of expectation with regards to what it is you expect to see, because you will see exactly the reflection of yourself when you pass. You will receive the welcoming as an exact replication of what it is that you are, and that will match with the people that are also at the same place. A little bit like when you move to big school. The people in the classes that you meet up with will be at the same level as yourself. It is just about composure and removing expectation, and allow the flow of well-being to grow within you, just like the spring flowers are growing within Mother Earth as we speak, and they thrive for the light and the air. They do not always get a good welcoming, depending on the weather and the wind. The sun may be out, but also the winter and the frost may still be with us. You must expect that every stage of growth is about allowing the intellectual springboard of opportunity to come towards you, and what it is you are yet to experience. We will not go further into this today, but you are blessed by your questions. Do not allow yourself to think that the question was wrong. It is not wrong. The question is right. The wrong questions don't necessarily have the wrong answers. Everything deserves an answer. But the most important thing is, do not set rules around your thinking with expectations. God bless you. With love, with light, for now. So there is the answer to your question. It's a matter of where your consciousness is when you pass. It actually reminded me of the film Ghost, and I expect everybody's seen that, where the bad guy is caught by the nasty people, the nasty ones who took him off, and the good guy goes into the light. And I suppose that's just a simple way of putting it. Where your consciousness is, there you will be also. And there will also be your friends on the same level. It's all a school of life. As my husband calls it, a game. He says, it's all a game, Carolyn, don't take it too seriously. So that is where we go when we pass. Can't wait to meet my friends. I remember when my friend May went and, oh dear, and I was talking to her about the light she would go to when she died, and I nursed her to the end. She was a dear, dear friend. And I used to say about the light, and you must go into the light. And anyway, she came through to Robin shortly afterwards, and the words she said were, well, it was nothing like you said, Carolyn, nothing at all. She said, there were all these people here who all knew me, she said, and I didn't know them at all. And she said, my mother and father said to me, she said, you've been a bit of a girl, haven't you? And of course she had. She was a wild one. She was 86 when she died, and miss her still. And she often pops into Mary Madison to say hello as well. Margot popped into Mary the other day too. Mary was sitting down in her new bungalow, and she's having her cup of tea, and she suddenly thought of Margot, and she said, oh, Margot, she said, I do miss you so. And she said, and Margot said, well, I'm here, she said, and I miss you too. And that was it. She said, I was so pleased to hear from her. I said, well, I think it's time you started your work again, Mary. As she's been told so many times that she has to work with the communicator again. But she may be ready now. We shall see. But she was going to get in contact with Robin, because, of course, Robin doesn't live too far away from her. So that was the first question answered. And I had been thinking myself, I'm going to ask about the two-eye stone. I don't know whether you've read Edgar Casey. Well, Edgar Casey wrote a book on Atlantis. I did have it here. Is that it there? Yes. This is the book, Edgar Casey on Atlantis. And Edgar Casey was a very well-known prophet, seer, whatever you'd like to call him. He died in the 1940s, and he had the ability to go into self-trance, and people would ask questions about people's illness, and then he would get an answer, and the treatment would be given. But this wasn't all he did, because eventually, when he started talking about people's past lives, and he spoke about lives on Atlantis, and this stone called the two-eye stone. And so I thought, I'm going to ask about this two-eye stone. So I asked Robin. Now I know that Robin most likely knows nothing about it, because I don't know whether he's read Edgar Casey or not. I really don't, but I shouldn't think so, because he always says he doesn't want to have his mind cluttered up with other people's stuff. He prefers to get his quite clearly from where he's getting his information. I will read you the answer that I got, and then I will speak about some of the things I've read. In answer to a question on the two-eye stone mentioned by Edgar Casey and referred to as the terrible crystal. Some information has been asked with regards to the one, the crystal, the knowing stone. Now those were his first words, and it was interesting that he called it the one, as I shall mention later. And also that the crystal, the knowing stone. One must remember that a lot of these thoughts are passive memories from those that remember very little, that know much. You must also remember that thoughts in themselves are receivers. So as you receive thoughts, you can develop on these thoughts and think about them and give them credence and allow them to develop into whatever direction that allows you or it or anything to go towards. So, with regards to the stone that is mentioned in the stories, the fables, it is not by coincidence that this stone has been left and forgotten for many years. But it is, and was once known to be, the one. The heretics knew it because of what it actually occurred and what it actually did. Was it held the memories of the past, present, and the future. It was a memory-holding device. And the heretics considered it to be, if you had that in your hand, you had humanity in hand, because it knew all, said all, and did all. The most remarkable thing about this stone is it knew and could foretell events that were going to occur, which made it remarkably unique. And those that held its power held the future in their hands, because they knew what it was. So it was a powerful stone. And in recognition of that, it needed to be lost. And that it was. Because humanity in themselves regard power as onus over others. And this is a sad factor. Why? Why have we, us, you, developed this need to have power over others? Does that mean you can insist upon them your way, your routines, your thoughts? Of course, this is part of the development of the spirit of man, seeing what objectives he heads towards. But it isn't necessarily a procurement of soul. Soul has a different directive. Soul drives you towards a different thought pattern. Soul works predominantly with love. Spirit in itself can work with anything, and it does. Mentality, which is the fixed fuse box within a man or woman, is normally the driving device between most things. Spirituality and soul is forgotten. There is, of course, the Trinity, which connects all three, but the dividing lines between those are forgotten. So this stone, this crystal, this power device in itself was a recording device. It had memory facets to it. It held the truth. Not only did it hold the truth, but it also had an ability to know the future. But of course, when the future, the past and the present is happening simultaneously, that is not particularly remarkable. It is only remarkable to those that can't see that. You know, once upon a time, if you held a plastic device in your hand and spoke into it, and spoke to somebody 10,000 miles away in another country, you would think that's absolutely remarkable. Yet today it isn't, because things have changed. Things have moved on. Aeroplanes that fly, metal devices that sink beneath the sea, many, many, many fathoms beneath. Yet all these things, once upon a time, were considered by the heretics to be pure and utter baloney. It can't happen, and yet they do. So remember, my children, my people, my person, that simultaneously now the future, the present and the past is happening. Many different dimensions are all happening on the same terra firma that you stand on. The heretics didn't know this because they didn't know the quantum physics behind time. But as the opening up of the human heart begins to spiral towards a better choice, you will begin to receive information like this. Those that choose to listen will be given to receive. So, my child, with love, we designate the thought to you that your past, your present, and your future is in your hands. You do not need devices to tell you what that is, because you can create whatever it is by your own actions from this point onwards. Consider yourself part of the One. You are part of it in miniature form, creating your own format of objectivity for you and paving the way for others that stand behind you. Leaders in themselves aren't people that drive forces of people on in a directive they do not wish to go. Leaders are those that go forward, take steps in a direction that nobody has been before, and they are followed by example, by love, and by care. Be a leader and be the best one you can. God bless you for now, and thank you. Now, where am I going to go next? There's so much running through my mind. In Atlantis, according to Edgar Cayce, there were the children of the law of one. And then there were the children of Belial, who I suppose were the ones who wanted the power of the stone. The children of the law of one followed the law of one, the law of love, the law of care. The children of Belial wanted power and were selfish. You can see it all working out today. It's all there, out there for us to see. You may remember me speaking about Francis Bamford, who was a vicar on the island in Newchurch, who we used to go and listen to at Newchurch Church when I was working with Margot and Wally. He was a lovely man, or a lovely spirit, I should say, really, because he was no longer in this world, but he was able to speak to us and give us information. And on the... You'll know where I'm going in a minute. On the 30th of October 1985, he said, "Welcome once again, my dear children." You know, we are so often referred to as children. By the people that speak through Robin, by Francis Bamford, by many others. So we are children of the universe, I always say. My dear children, I have been to a much higher place and seen the God of creation since you were last here. And I can only say to you, the way you nearly worship stones is the greatest thing you can do. If you study the formation of stones, you will know that Revelations chapter 4 is the description that was a vision of reality in the first few verses. So the fish is not just for Christianity, but as you can know, the sardine. Later on your walk, I will show you a stone which is the centre of a cross, which should not be there at all. More explanation one day, but not yet. Well, that was very strange. However, when we looked in the book of Revelations, it spoke about the sardine stone. It spoke about the throne of God. And I would advise people to read that chapter 4, the beginning, and it's all about the stones and the power of the stones. And I was so impressed by what Francis Bamford said to us that I actually copied out, because he'd told us before to read the book of Revelations. So I copied out the whole of the Revelations so that I could read it as one easy read rather than from the Bible in various verses. The sardine stone, well, I believe it's called sardius as well. So the sardine, which is a fish, which represented the symbol of Christianity. Was it the sardius stone? I wonder. Represented by or it's called the sardine stone as well. Anyway, we went out into the churchyard, and I think I may have told you this before. And there's one, all the graveyards, gravestones have been taken up and laid as a path around the church. And there's now just a great big lawn outside. But there's one stone left standing, and it's a Celtic cross. Big Celtic cross, stands about 6 feet, 7 feet high. So you've got the round bit and then the cross coming down like that. And in one of these round bits here, in the cross, was laying another cross. It was only a metal cross, not a silver one. It was about that big. And in the middle of that cross was a blue stone. And around that stone there, the round stone that went, were the words, "He, being dead, yet speaketh." And Francis Bamford, being dead, was speaking to us. Or being dead, there is no such thing, was speaking to us. So we found the cross with the stone in. Later on the 3rd of November 1988, we went to see Francis again. How nice to see you here again, so soon, my dear children. I welcome you, and know you followed instructions, and read the parts of the Bible I told you of. Also, you found the stone, which in its way is very important. You have also read Exodus, which may be a little misleading, as the priests of old gained power from the stones, but used the power in the wrong way. So the two unknown stones were removed from earth by the Creator, a stone of importance. You may like to think of him. Now that was interesting. A stone of importance, you may like to think of him, the Creator. Now the stone you found, although worthless, was the nearest colour to the stone Thummim, which was so powerful. Now, having studied Revelations and learnt more about the stones and the angels, you left your body and saw what you thought was a sun. This was not so. It was a glowing stone, the beginning and the end, the Alpha and Omega. That was the most important of all experiences you have had so far. The time was right for this. Time is unimportant, yet very important. You will be shown the importance of the word time. Leaving aside Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, study Revelations again, and also Ezekiel, which deals with those of other planets. Study the primitive races in the old days and the stone circles, and more knowledge will be gained. Remember, my children, you gain knowledge, and you, who is so gifted and right, can teach the others that no one else can do in such a way. Margot told me of her out-of-body experience, approaching the sun, and she said she felt heat from its centre, but the rays she described as wiggly were icy cold, and the shape was oval rather than round. I asked a question to Mary Anning in 1992. Mary Anning being one of Margot's working guides. What was the power associated with Urim and Thummim? Now the Urim and Thummim, they were in the breastplate. The priests wore a breastplate, and there were 12 pockets in the breastplate and 12 stones, and they knew that the stones held the power. And the Urim and Thummim were the two that were taken from the priests. And this is what Mary Anning had to say. These were stones, and both had the same power of wisdom, of a specific type, of sorting out truth from untruth, of knowing people who were genuine and who they are, and are who they say, from those who pretend to be genuine but aren't. From the beginning, there were those who were powerful and true, and those who feigned it. When these stones were worn, the wearer was able to distinguish which was which. Urim was a yellowy green, and Thummim was blue. And as Francis said, it was the nearest blue that he could get to Thummim on the centre of that cross that he apported for us. And in 1990, we were sitting for visions in my study, which had once been the study of Edmund Carr, the vicar who lived in the Grove so many years before I did, and who had spoken to Margot. And it was his study and my study, and Margot and I used to sit there during the winter when we couldn't go out and do Earthbound. We would sit for visionary experiences. And these were two she had at the dawn of time. The dawn of time. How lovely. The dawn of time. They were very lovely experiences, and I could visualize, as she was telling me, I could visualize what she was saying. The scene opens, and I am walking along golden sands. The sea is to the right, and there are trees to the left. My soulmate walks beside me. It is me, yet it is not as I am now. I have long fair hair and a slender figure, and he has red hair and a beard, and both quite naked. It is warm, and the sun shines upon us. There are two others with us, Margot and her soulmate, Micah. She has long brown hair and a slender body. We run along the beach ahead of the others, laughing and holding hands, turn towards the trees and a grassy dell where a beautiful bush grows full of pungent smelling white star-shaped flowers. That was the first vision. The second. Once more the four of us are walking on warm sand, but this time there's no sea in sight, and it appears to be desert. We run on, rolling and roll, laughing on the warm sand. It is all laughter and love and happiness. There is a building in the distance, and we make our way towards it. It appears to be made of rock and stone, and drawing nearer, we see it as a roughly made pyramid. The side is open, and we enter to find it cool inside. There is a ledge about 3 foot from the ground, on which is sitting a large, glowing, pale pink crystal, sparkling with a light of its own. My soulmate hands it to me, and I hold it to my heart with both hands and hug it there. I pass it to Margot, who passes it to Micah, who returns it to my soulmate, who places it back on the ledge. All the time it is sparkling in its own light, as it is quite shady inside the pyramid. The four of us then stand in silence beside the jewel. The crystal was natural, very pale pink, but not like ruby or rose quartz. So again, we're being shown the importance of a stone, and we stand in reverence before it. Over and over again. I mean, I believe there's a stone of scone, isn't it, that Parliament has? I think it came from Scotland, and I think it's under the throne in Parliament. I think the Queen sits on it when she's, or the ruler sits on this stone. I know I've read about it and I can't remember all about it, but it's called the Stone of Scone, and I believe it came from Scotland. So there's something very special about stone. And I remember Robin telling us recently about how had held this rock in his hand, and how everything came from rock, as rock went round the universe and collected whatever it is. So there's the answer, as I understand it to be. And I've also had... I must tell you about Robin's book too, because Robin keeps having this vision of a blue stone. And I say to him, one of these days that blue stone is really going to apport itself into your hand. And in his book he mentions how this blue stone appears every so often. And his book, although it is written as a novel, it's actually his own experiences, but he's written it in a much more light-hearted way, so people can accept, I suppose, what has happened to him. But everything is there in his book. Everything is written of. Even his experience of going to Ireland and earlier on in his life, and various people he met in Ireland when he was younger, and how he went to Ireland in 2005, and how he built his house, and the people he met, and alongside his physical life there is this other life, this other realm that is going on all the time, that he lives in. And so everything that he has written about, possibly in an imaginary way, has actually occurred to him with people who weren't necessarily the people as he writes about them, but they did happen. It all happened exactly as he said it. And there again, the blue stone keeps turning up in his life. So the Sons of the Law of One that Edgar Cayce wrote about were the pure race, and they were purified by keeping the pure strain. But the sons of Belial, well, they're out there now, doing what they're doing, are still carrying on, because many of the people who lived in Atlantis are present on this planet at this particular time that we're going through, and we're having to face the same old. But we have to remember that the sons of Belial used the stone for their own selfish ends and their own selfish purposes. And we also have to remember what happened to Atlantis. It sank beneath the waves, never to be seen again. But Edgar Cayce says parts of Atlantis would rise again in 1968 and 1969 around Bimini and that coast around there. Well, in 1968 and 1969, there was a woman who actually saw that she was doing diving off there, and she actually saw a temple down below there, and there is a big sort of road, the Bimini Road as it's called, which is down below the sea, down below the surface. And so who knows what's going to happen? We don't know that Atlantis sank, Lemuria sank, and we have a completely different world, from physical world, from those times. Perhaps we're going to have a completely different physical world again. Who knows? But it seems to me that there's something very important about stones. I have my stones on the top shelf, as you can see here in this room. They are protectors of this room. They came by magic. One of them did in particular. 3 of them came from Mary Madison. The apophyllite came by magic from India, as did Mary's. I have stones in all rooms, and I wear them because they're important to wear. And this is why, jewels are not just to be worn to be beautiful and to be looked at and admired. They're also worn because of the power they hold, the power that you understand. And they're worn for a specific purpose. So I've usually got stones on me as well as around my home. I could read you, just to finish off with, another little Earthbound to lighten up the story. Another ghost. Mary gave me some communications that she'd received from Margot. And the first was an Earthbound rescue. And Margot put case 147, so that was her 147th. I cannot rest. I have to keep looking at it. I was so happy in this lovely new house. The view, the people around. I was the most fortunate woman blessed to live here. Now this is the house that Mary lived in Dudley Road. It wasn't the small one where all our crystal work was done. It was the one further down the road, the last house in Dudley Road, and Mary lived on the corner there. Wonderful sea views, of course. Then something happened inside me. Cannot understand why I took it. Must find it to put it back. Tried to laugh and forget. Help me. Misty veil now. Cannot see clear. Sign. Margot saw a misty presence in a rocking chair. Old lady who was dying gave me unusual ring, brought to her by her nephew who'd been drowned from his ship. Must be given to his wife, please, she said. Her daughter not to have it. Promise me, she said. I held her hand as she slipped into the next world. What can I do? I took the ring and did not give it to her relative, but kept it. Now I want it to go to its rightful owner, as cannot continue on my way. I look for it, but when I left my earthly body, the ring would have gone with my other jewellery. Can you help me, please, to continue my journey? Come back. Most folk called me M. I tried to be friendly, and then had to keep what was not mine. It was as if something evil was inside me. I worried over it when too late, I could not give it back. I tried to laugh and sing, to forget, and then start looking for it. I feel lost now. Pray for me that I can go to a place of glory. I saw a light once, so bright. It was beckoning me on, but I couldn't go. I felt as if a long cord held me prisoner. Pray for me. So, I do want to go, and I'm so sorry for my sin. The ring, the circle, the everlasting circle, on and on, never ending. Praise God, the circle. And so we took her to St Wilfrid's Church. This was Mary and Margot. They went to St Wilfrid's Church, which is the Catholic church. And Margot saw a vision of a large gold circle in front of the altar. And that was it. Just another story, another life, another death, another circle. No such thing as death, as I keep saying to people. It's just a journey, and depending on where your consciousness is where you will go when you pass. So thank you, Sam, for coming and filming me so that I can tell these stories and give them out there. People have to make up their own minds as to whether I'm telling the truth to them, for them. It is my truth, and it is my understanding that I share. So God bless you all, and thank you.